The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary of the Minister of National Defence has 3.5 minutes left to conclude his remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this opportunity is already memorable for me, given the attempt by the member for Timmins James Bay to deny provision of his own party's platform using a point of order, not once during my speech, Mr. Speaker, but twice. We will not be deflected from our purpose, Mr. Speaker, by a $21 billion carbon tax, by the job-killing proposals from the other side. We are focused on a policy of invention and innovation, attracting the best managers and entrepreneurs, ensuring the right skills development for Canadians to make our economy's leading sectors engines of higher productivity, growth, and job creation. Because that's the bottom line, Mr. Speaker. Every day we lose in this House to issues other than setting the conditions for creating jobs is a day when Canadians lose confidence in us. And this government, when the time is allocated according to our priorities, will not make that mistake. That's why this bill, Mr. Speaker, for a country that has become a leader, even more of a leader in financial services, is improving oversight of CMHC for its securitization functions at this critical moment in the evolution of our property market. That's why we're updating the Bretton Woods Act to make sure we fulfill our international obligations as a strong member of the G20 and the G8. That's why we're accelerating the capital cost allowance for clean energy and phasing out 2 tax credits to ensure the neutrality of the system, and applying the second one, the one formerly for Atlantic oil and gas and mining, also to clean energy generating equipment to ensure that Canadian entrepreneurs all across this country have the best opportunity to grow a leading energy sector even larger in the years and decades to come. That's why, Mr. Speaker, we are updating the Public Service Superannuation Act to make sure there aren't unfunded liabilities there. That's why we're opening the door to pooled registered pension plans to make sure that entrepreneurs and small businesses who don't have access to pensions, and there are millions of them across this country, do so in the future. That's why we're bringing into law the Bridge to Strengthen Trade Act, to make sure the Detroit River International Crossing, an artery of the largest trading relationship in the world, moves forward expeditiously and with a strong impetus from Canada behind it. That's why we're reforming the Scientific Research and Experimental Development Investment Tax Credit, to remove capital, remove the profit element for third parties, and reduce the tax credit from 20% to 15%, because we think these measures will make it work better and ensure that research and development are increasingly translated into jobs, employment, the breakthroughs of tomorrow that will allow the businesses of tomorrow in this country to move ahead. Mr. Speaker, these measures have already had a huge impact in my riding. I've been written by 50 Ajax business owners recently about the hiring credit for small business, about the pooled registered pension plan scheme contained in this bill. They're excited about it. It's relevant for them. Believe me, Mr. Speaker, that only adds to our determination on this side to move ahead. The youth employment strategy, Mr. Speaker, that this government has put forward has had benefits across the board in communities like Ajax-Pickering. $428,000 in 67 projects for the summer jobs program just this year, with much more to come under the same strategy. Mr. Speaker, in Canada's statement prepared for the recent IMF board meeting in Tokyo, our Minister of Finance spoke of, quote, measures to support jobs and growth by improving conditions for businesses, entrepreneurs and innovators, investing in training and infrastructure, and helping the unemployed find jobs. Mr. Speaker, that's exactly what this bill does.
Questions and comments. Questions and commentaire. The Honourable Member for Timmins James Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I listened with great interest to my honourable colleague, and I have to say I was rather let down by the continual use of mistruths. I'd like to quote from the Ottawa Citizen, because I think Dan Gardner hit it on the head, about the use of the political lie. This is the whole point of Dan Gardner's article, is on the use of lying. He says, the worst part is that the people in the Prime Minister's office will not care if I call them cynical liars, who would wince when they look in the mirror.
Order. The Honourable Member for Ancaster, Dundas, Flamborough, West Hills.
It's very clear, Mr. Speaker, that you can't do indirectly what you shouldn't be doing directly, Mr. Speaker, and this is clearly unparliamentary language is being used by the member.
Yes, I will remind the Honourable Member that the Honourable Member.
I'm leading a point, and I understand the rules of Parliament. This is why I think it's very important that he listens to this. He said that...
Order. 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 I'll just remind the honourable member for Timmins James Bay that we can't do indirectly what we're not allowed to do directly. And even when quoting from media reports or articles, we've had this case before the House before, we can't use unparliamentary language or use it to accuse members of unparliamentary actions.
That in this Parliament, there's a notion that you can't call someone a liar, but the issue that you can lie is seen as parliamentary. So I would continue with Dan Gardner saying it's the gobsmacking cynicism and contempt for this foundation, contempt for Parliament, the judiciary, the media, and anyone who gets in their way. But most of all, it's contempt for Canadians.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There was no question there. There was no truth there. And there was no integrity there, Mr. Speaker, in the remarks of the member opposite. But that's no surprise to those of us on this side of the House. It will, however, not let the members opposite off the hook. A $21.5 billion carbon tax on page 4 of their own party platform remains with them.
The honourable member for Timmins James Bay is
refrain from calling people liars. He cannot stand in this House and make a mistruth. He does not have that evidence, and he has used this again and again in this House to divert attention. I refer you to page 680 of...
Order. Order. The honourable member has asked a question. The parliamentary secretary is answering it. It sounds like what the member for Timmins James Bay is raising is a furthering point of debate. If there's time, I can recognize him for another question and comment, and he can make his point then. The honourable parliamentary secretary has the floor to respond to the comment that the member for Timmins James Bay made.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The bill before this House is absolutely about fiscal policy. And it is absolutely legitimate for us on this side of the House to draw the contrast between a low-tax plan for jobs growth and long-term prosperity and the other side's electoral platform, on the basis of which some of them entered this House. And that $21.5 billion carbon tax proposed by his leader, embraced by all of them, expresses that contrast as well as anything else, as does the performance of his leader in debate in this House last week when he spoke for the better part of an hour without even mentioning the question of public debt.
Questions and comments, questions and commentary. The honourable member for New Westminster, Coquitlam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And speaking of platform, what's in platforms, in 2008, the Conservative platform promised to, quote, develop and implement a North American-wide cap-and-trade system for greenhouse gases and air pollution, with implementation to occur between 2012 and 2015. So if he's interested in reading further, there's an article by Mr. Simpson, Jeffrey Simpson, in the Globe and Mail that he might be interested in that talks about the Conservatives' carbon amnesia. The Conservative Party's attack machine, with its television ads, canned speeches, and pre-written scripts, has always been constructed on exaggeration tinged with mendacity. This is a quote, Mr. Speaker. To this, since Parliament resumed, can now be added flagrant hypocrisy, since the machine and its mouthpieces, Conservative MPs, are attacking with customary vehemence the very policy on which they campaign. I'm wondering if the honourable colleague can respond to that.
The honourable parliamentary secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member knows perfectly well that there is no such North American regime and that there never was a program, a policy proposal on this side to create a $21.5 billion carbon tax. That proposal did not come from this party. That proposal came from theirs. And they should both know, the members who've asked these questions, as they have reminded this House many times over, that it's not so much the policy move, the policy mistake that matters, it's the cover-up that Canadians find particularly often.
Resuming debate.